Jace Rowan stood on the edge of the broken valley as the Empire ship lifted away, leaving him in silence. The wind cut across the dead land like a blade. Carrying dust and cold air, he had been a soldier, loyal and brave, but now he was an exile. The council said he broke the rules, but he knew the truth. He was punished for something he did not do. Still, no one listened, no one cared. The moon of Lorith was known for one thing. No human survived here for long. Jace looked around at the empty rocks and tall black trees. Nothing moved, nothing spoke. And for a moment he felt the true weight of exile falling on his shoulders. He was alone, completely alone. But he refused to die alone. He refused to give the Empire that victory. It was broken and rusted, but it was better than the open ground. Every night he heard strange sounds, footsteps, whispers, and low growls from the unseen creatures of the moon. Still, something felt different. Sometimes he felt watched, but not in a hostile way. It felt almost curious. One night, while searching for food, Jace saw something strange in the distance. A faint blue light flickered near the base of a collapsed bridge. He moved carefully, keeping his hand on the knife he made from a broken pipe. As he got closer, the light dimmed and he heard a soft cry. It did not sound like a creature. It sounded like a person trying not to be heard. Jace stepped behind a fallen beam and looked down. What he saw made him freeze. A young alien girl lay curled against the metal wall, her clothes torn and her arm bleeding. Her skin was pale like moonlight, and her silver eyes shone even in the darkness. She tried to push herself up, but fell again. Too weak to stand, before he could speak, she saw him and panicked. She tried to crawl away. But her legs shook and failed. Jace raised his hands to show he meant no harm. "Easy, I won't hurt you," he said, keeping his voice low, but she looked terrified. To her, a human was the last thing she wanted to see. When she tried to escape again, her foot slipped, and she almost fell off the broken edge of the bridge. Without thinking, Jace lunged forward and grabbed her wrist, pulling her back to safety. Her eyes widened in shock as he steadied her. For a moment, their faces were close, and he saw fear mixed with confusion in her eyes. She whispered something in her language. Too soft for him to understand, but then he noticed something hanging around her neck. A symbol, glowing faint blue, shaped like a star wrapped in wings. He knew that mark. Every soldier knew it. It belonged to the ruling family of the Empire. She was not just an alien girl. She was the princess, Ariel Lourise. Jace stepped back, realizing how dangerous this situation was. If the Empire found him with her, they would kill him without asking questions. If the traitors who wounded her found her, they would finish the job. For a moment, the world felt silent again. But this silence was heavier. The princess looked at him with weak, frightened eyes, as if waiting for his decision. Would he leave her here to die, or take her with him and risk everything? Jace looked at the empty land around them, at the endless night sky, and at the girl who could barely breathe. He remembered how it felt when the Empire abandoned him here. He remembered the cold, the fear, the loneliness. He could not let anyone else feel that same pain. Not even someone who came from the Empire that betrayed him. So he picked her up gently. She struggled weakly. But she did not have the strength to fight. "I'm not your enemy," he whispered, as he carried her toward his shelter. She closed her eyes, not trusting him, but also not resisting anymore. Inside the shelter, he covered her with his only blanket and tried to clean her wound. Her breathing steadied, but her hands kept shaking. She whispered again, this time with a voice full of fear and confusion. Jace did not know her words, but he understood her meaning. She thought he captured her, but he did not take her to keep her. He took her because he refused to be alone. He refused to let another life fade away on this cold moon. And this choice would change everything. Princess Ariel Lourise woke with a sharp breath, her heart racing as she pushed herself up from the rough ground. The shelter was dim, lit only by a small fire Jace kept burning. Her body hurt in many places, and her arm throbbed from the wound she received before she collapsed. But the real shock hit her when she finally saw him, a human sitting a few steps away, sharpening a blade calmly. As if watching her sleep was a normal task, Ariel's silver eyes widened with fear. Her people taught her since childhood that humans were dangerous, violent, and selfish. They were told humans cared only for power, that they would betray anyone for survival. And now she was injured, weak, and trapped inside a shelter with one of them. She tried to stand, but pain shot up her leg. Jace looked up quickly, his hand lifting in a peaceful gesture. "Don't move too fast," he said softly. "You're still hurt." His voice was calm and steady, but Ariel's breathing grew faster. She pressed herself back against the metal wall, eyes full of fear. "You kidnapped me," she said in her language, the words trembling out. Jace did not understand the words, but he understood the fear. He shook his head and pointed to her wound, then to the door, then to the outside darkness. He tried to show her she was safer here than out there, but Ariel's mind refused to accept it. Humans did not save aliens. Humans did not help enemies. So what did he want from her? Her heartbeat grew louder in her ears as she watched the man who held her life in his hands, Jace, on the other side, felt the tension like a weight pressing down. He had not spoken to another living being in weeks. Now a princess sat before him, terrified, shaking, and thinking he wanted to harm her. He sighed softly, wishing he had the words to calm her. When he reached for the water container, Ariel flinched so hard she almost fell again. He froze for a moment, then placed the water down slowly between them. He stepped back, giving her space. Ariel stared at the container. Confused, why was he giving her water? Why was he stepping away instead of controlling her? She remembered the stories, the warnings, the fear her teachers planted inside her since childhood. But the man before her did not fit any of those stories. He looked tired, lonely, and wounded himself. His arm was wrapped in cloth stained with dried blood. His clothes were torn. And his eyes held a sadness she did not understand. Still, she refused to trust him. She pushed the water away with a weak gesture, almost dropping it. Jace didn't force her. He simply picked it up again and set it down closer to her side, then turned his back so she wouldn't feel watched. This confused her even more. If he captured her, why was he giving her choices? Why was he trying to make her comfortable? Time passed slowly. Outside, strange cries echoed from the forest, the land alive with danger. Ariel shivered, remembering how those same creatures chased her the night she was attacked. If Jace had not found her, she knew she would already be dead. Still, fear held her heart tight. After a long moment, she finally whispered, "Why?" Jace turned his head slightly. Not understanding, she pointed to her wound. Then to him, then to the door. "Why save me?" she repeated softly. Jace looked at her for a moment, then sat down near the fire. He tapped his chest lightly, as if saying me. Then he pointed outside, then drew a circle in the dirt with his finger. A lonely circle with nothing inside it. Ariel watched his simple drawing and understood his meaning. He was alone, terribly alone. Humans? She was taught, did not feel such things, but the man before her showed sadness and pain openly. This made her mind tremble with confusion. Jace then pointed to her, tapped her shoulder gently from a distance, and gave a small shake of his head. He tried to show he did not want to hurt her. But Ariel did not know how to respond. No human had ever shown kindness to her. No human had ever risked anything for an alien. When she tried to stand again, her leg gave out and she fell forward. Jace rushed to catch her, stopping her from hitting the ground. His hands were strong but gentle, holding her just long enough to steady her. Their eyes met for the second time. This time, she did not see a monster. She saw a tired human who was fighting to survive just like her. She pulled away carefully, unsure, confused, but no longer full of the same fear. Jace helped her back to her blanket. Moving slowly so he wouldn't scare her again, she watched him for a long time. And for the first time in her life, she wondered if her empire had been wrong. But Ariel was still a princess. And nothing in her world prepared her for trusting a human exile. Not yet, not fully, but something inside her had begun to change, and she could not stop it now. Ariel slept lightly through the night, waking again and again to every sound outside the shelter. The moon was full of strange noises, whispering winds, and distant growls. Each time she opened her eyes, she saw the human sitting near the fire. Never sleeping, never relaxing, Jace stayed awake to protect her. Even though she still did not trust him, when morning came, Ariel tried to stand again. Using the wall for support, Jace stepped forward slowly, offering his hand. She hesitated, her pride holding her still, but the pain in her leg forced her to accept the support. His grip was steady and warm, surprising her again with its gentleness. They stepped outside, and Ariel felt the cold wind hit her skin. The sky was a pale gray, and the forest around them looked even more dangerous than she remembered. Strange marks covered the nearby rocks, long scratches, deep footprints, and trails left by creatures she didn't want to meet again. Jace pointed at the tracks, then made a small gesture with his hand that meant danger. Ariel nodded, her eyes scanning the forest edge. She still feared him, but the land around them was something she feared even more. As they walked slowly toward a stream, Ariel finally spoke, her voice low and careful. "You should not have saved me," she said, even though she knew he might not understand the words. Jace looked at her, studying her expression, and shook his head gently. He tapped his chest, then pointed to her injury again, as if saying it was the right thing to do. But Ariel's mind kept replaying the attack. The traitors inside her empire, the betrayal, the ambush. Her hand tightened around her necklace, the symbol of her family, glowing faint blue under the morning light. She looked at Jace, then pointed to the necklace. "Do you know what this means?" she asked. Jace nodded, his expression serious. He knew exactly who she was, princess of the ruling empire, daughter of the High Queen, the reason soldiers hunted this moon day and night, searching for her body, alive or dead. Ariel took a slow breath, then spoke again. "They want me dead," she said, her voice shaking. "Not humans, not outsiders. My own people." Jace watched her carefully, trying to understand. She pressed her hand to her chest, then drew a line across her throat. The message was clear. Someone inside the empire wanted her gone. Jace's face darkened. He understood enough to feel the danger around them growing. If her enemies found her here, he would also become their target. And if the Empire's army found him with their princess, he would be killed as a criminal before he could explain anything. Both sides were enemies now. They were alone together, hunted by all. A sudden noise came from the forest, a low mechanical hum, followed by sharp clicking sounds. Ariel froze, recognizing it instantly. "Search drones," she whispered in fear. Empire's search drones. Jace grabbed her arm softly and pulled her behind a fallen tree. The small machines floated between branches, scanning the ground with bright red lights. If they found Ariel, they would report her location. If they saw Jace beside her, they would mark him for immediate capture, or worse, elimination. Ariel covered her mouth with both hands, trying not to make a sound. Jace kept one arm protectively in front of her, his body positioned to shield her from the drones. She felt her heart pounding so hard, she thought the machines would hear it. Minutes passed slowly, heavy like hours. Finally, the drones moved away, following a trail deeper into the forest. Ariel let out a shaking breath, her entire body trembling. Jace placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, grounding her, steadying her. She didn't pull away this time. Fear had changed something inside her again when they returned to the shelter. Ariel sat near the fire with her knees pulled close. She stared at Jace, confusion swirling inside her. Why was he risking his life for her again and again? Why did he stand between her and danger without hesitation? Why did he look at her, not with fear or hate, but with quiet responsibility? She finally gathered the courage to speak. "You could leave me," she whispered. "Your exile would end faster. You would survive more easily." Jace looked at her with a tired but honest expression. He tapped his chest again, then pointed to the empty land outside. Then he drew 2 small marks in the dirt, one for himself, one for her. Close together, he shook his head, meaning he would not go alone. He would not leave her alone either. Ariel stared at the marks, her breath catching. She understood his message more clearly than any spoken words. He did not save her because she was a princess. He saved her because she was another living soul on a moon meant for death. And he refused to let her die like he was meant to, for the first time. She began to trust him, just a little, just enough to take the next step beside him, even though enemies from both worlds were closing in fast. The storm came without warning, rolling across the dark horizon like a giant gray wave. The wind grew stronger, shaking the trees and sending leaves flying in every direction. Jace knew they needed shelter fast. Ariel could barely walk for long, and the rain on this moon was known to burn skin if one stayed outside too long. He guided her through the twisting forest until they reached a cave glowing faint blue from crystal walls. Inside, the air was warm, and the crystals hummed softly like living things. Ariel leaned against the wall, breathing heavily, her face pale from pain and exhaustion. Jace quickly gathered dry pieces of crystal bark and started a small fire. The warm light filled the cave, painting both of their faces with soft shadows. Outside, thunder cracked again, shaking the ground. Ariel wrapped her arms around herself, not from cold, but from memories pressing into her mind. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the rain hitting the cave entrance. Finally, Ariel broke the silence, her voice low. "You want to know why they attacked me?" she said, her eyes staring at the fire. Jace turned his gaze toward her, listening carefully. Ariel touched her necklace, the symbol of her family. "I was not supposed to be sent on that ship," she whispered. "It was a trap made inside the Empire Council." Jace frowned, slowly understanding that her enemies were not outsiders. They were powerful people from her own world. She continued in simple words so he might understand. "They want the throne, they want power, and I am in their way." She looked up, and he saw fear mixed with sadness in her silver eyes. "My mother does not know I am alive. They lied to her." Jace felt a heavy stone forming in his chest. He had been exiled for something he never did. Now the princess before him was also betrayed by the same empire. 2 different lives destroyed by the same powerful hands. He drew a slow breath and finally spoke, his voice soft. "Me. Punished too," he said, tapping his chest. Ariel watched him carefully. She realized she had never asked him for his story, not even once. She had been too afraid, too confused, too stubborn to think of him as anything other than a threat. Jace looked down. Remembering the moment he was dragged onto the ship, he pointed to the scar on his arm, then traced a line in the dirt of the cave floor. "Not my fault," he said quietly, "but they say it is." Ariel's breath caught for a moment. "You were innocent," she whispered, more to herself than to him. Jace nodded slowly, the pain in his eyes telling her everything she needed to know. The princess lowered her gaze, guilt slowly rising inside her chest. Her empire had taken everything from him. They exiled him to die, and still. He saved her life again and again. She leaned her head back against the crystal wall, her voice trembling. "I am sorry," she said softly, even though she knew he might not understand the language. But Jace did understand the feeling behind her words. The way her shoulders lowered, the way her eyes softened, the way her voice broke slightly. He knew she was apologizing for the pain he carried. He sat beside the fire, not too close, not too far. Giving her space, Ariel studied him carefully, noticing small things she missed before. The way he always placed himself between her and danger. The way he stayed awake at night so she could sleep. The way he offered help without forcing it, slowly but surely. A warm feeling began to form in her chest. Not trust, not yet, but something close to understanding. Something she never thought she would feel toward a human exile. The storm outside grew louder, roaring like a giant beast. Inside the cave, the fire crackled softly. Ariel looked at Jace again. Her voice steady for the first time. "If we survive this, if we escape this moon," she said, "I will clear your name." Jace looked at her with surprise, then with something close to hope. A small, almost invisible smile touched his lips. He nodded slowly, gratefully. Ariel did not say anything else. She simply closed her eyes, leaning her head against the wall. For the first time since the attack, she felt safe enough to rest. Jace moved his blanket closer to her shoulders, covering her gently. He did not touch her skin, not wanting to frighten her, but he made sure she was warm, protected, and comfortable as she drifted to sleep. One last thought flickered through her mind, a thought she never expected to have. Maybe humans are not what they told me. Outside the storm raged on, but inside the cave, something fragile and new was beginning to grow. A bond formed from pain, danger, and survival. A bond neither of them had expected. A bond that would soon be tested harder than either of them imagined. The storm faded by morning, leaving the land washed clean but silent. Strange mist floated above the ground, glowing faint blue in the early light. Ariel woke slowly. Her body weak, but her mind clearer than before. She saw Jace sitting at the cave entrance, sharpening a broken metal rod he used as a weapon. He looked tired, but alert, watching the forest with steady eyes. For a moment, she simply studied him. A human exile, a man her empire marked as dangerous, yet he guarded her all night without a single complaint. The guilt she felt earlier now grew deeper, pressing on her heart like a heavy stone. When Jace noticed she was awake, he gave a small nod. Ariel tried to stand, but her leg trembled beneath her. Jace rushed forward, offering support with his arm. She hesitated only for a moment before letting him steady her. Something inside her had changed. Fear was no longer the first feeling she felt when he touched her. They stepped outside the cave. The crystals around them glimmered softly, glowing with thin lines of energy, as if something alive flowed inside them. Ariel lifted her hand, letting her fingers hover above one of the crystals. A faint light pulsed in response. Jace watched with curiosity, unsure what she was doing. Ariel took a slow breath. It was time to tell him the truth, the real reason the traitors wanted her dead. She turned to face him, her voice low and serious. "There is something you must know," she said, touching her necklace again. Jace stepped closer, listening carefully. Ariel raised her hand toward the crystal wall. At first, nothing happened. Then a soft glow spread across her fingers, and the crystal responded with a brighter pulse. A wave of blue light rippled through the cave. Humming with warm energy, Jace took a step back in shock. Eyes wide, Ariel lowered her hand quickly, breathing heavily as if the small display drained her. "This power," she whispered, "runs in my family. But only a few can control it." She placed her hand over her chest. "It is rare, dangerous, and valuable." She looked down, sadness tightening her voice. "The council fears what I can become with this power. They fear I might challenge their rule one day. So they tried to remove me." Jace's eyes softened in understanding. He reached out and gently touched her shoulder. A silent gesture that meant he believed her. Ariel felt her throat tighten. The kindness surprising her every time, but the moment of quiet ended fast. A sharp whistling sound cut through the air. Jace pushed Ariel aside as an energy bolt hit the rock behind them. Exploding into dust, Ariel gasped, her heart jumping in fear. Jace grabbed her hand and pulled her behind a fallen log, shielding her with his body. Voices echoed in the distance, cold and sharp. Ariel recognized them immediately, assassins from her own empire. They had tracked her energy pulse. Now they wanted to finish what they started. Jace peeked over the log, scanning the trees for movement. The assassins moved fast, silent and lethal, wearing armor marked with symbols Ariel knew too well. She felt fear rising inside her, but Jace's steady presence beside her kept her from breaking. Another bolt flew toward them. This time Ariel reacted without thinking. She lifted her hand, and the crystal energy inside her flared awake. A wall of blue light burst from her palm, stopping the bolt mid-air. The explosion lit the forest with bright flames. Jace stared in shock. Unable to believe what he saw, Ariel collapsed right after. Her strength fading instantly, Jace caught her before she hit the ground. Her breathing was weak, her body shaking. She whispered, "I cannot use it long. It takes my life each time." Jace lifted her into his arms and ran. Weaving through the forest as more soldiers approached, energy shots burned the ground behind them, lighting the trees in quick flashes. Ariel held onto him weakly, trusting him completely now. When he finally reached a hidden ridge, he slid down behind a rock and held her close. For a moment, everything went silent again. The assassins' voices faded as they continued searching in the wrong direction. Jace looked down at Ariel, brushing dust from her hair. "You saved us," he whispered, even though she could barely hear him. Her eyes fluttered weakly, but she managed a small, tired smile. "You saved me first," she breathed. Her voice fading, Jace held her tighter. He knew now that she was more than a princess, more than a symbol. She was a target, a secret, a danger to the Empire, and a hope for herself. And he also knew the truth. He would risk anything to protect her. The bond between them had become something real, something unbreakable. And the enemies closing in would soon learn that neither the exile nor the princess would fall without a fight. Ariel woke with a weak gasp, her body shaking from the energy she used the day before. Jace was kneeling beside her, checking her pulse, brushing dust from her forehead, and watching the forest with sharp, tired eyes. He had not slept, not even for a moment. He did not dare close his eyes while assassins still searched for them. When Ariel tried to sit up, he helped her gently. Placing his arm behind her back, she leaned against him, too weak to hold her own weight. The warmth of his touch felt strangely safe, a feeling she had never expected to find with a human exile. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice faint. Jace shook his head, as if saying she owed him nothing, but deep inside, Ariel knew he had saved her life more times than she could count. As morning lights spread across the land, they prepared to move. Ariel forced herself to walk, even though her legs shook. Jace stayed close, ready to catch her if she fell. Each step grew heavier, each breath harder. The ridge they followed led to a clearing with broken metal pillars and old ruins. Jace scanned the area carefully. But something felt wrong. Too quiet, too empty. The kind of silence that came before danger. A faint humming sound grew in the distance. Ariel froze, recognizing it instantly. "Not assassins," she whispered in fear. "Soldiers." From the Empire fleet, Jace's heart dropped. Empire soldiers meant only one thing for him: execution. They would see a human exile with their princess and assume he kidnapped her before he could decide whether to run or hide. Bright blue lights shot down from above. A ship descended quickly. Blowing dust and leaves into the air, Ariel tried to warn them, but her voice broke. Jace grabbed her hand and pulled her behind a pillar, but it was too late. Dozens of soldiers in silver armor surrounded them within seconds. Energy rifles pointed at their heads. Jace instinctively placed himself in front of Ariel, shielding her with his body. The soldiers reacted instantly, shouting commands. "Human exile, surrender immediately. Step away from the princess." Ariel tried to step forward. "He is not," before she could finish. Two soldiers grabbed Jace, slamming him to the ground. Ariel cried out, her voice breaking as she reached toward him. "No, stop. He saved me." Jace struggled, but the soldiers forced his arms behind his back, locking metal cuffs around his wrists. Dust rose around him as he was pushed onto his knees. One soldier pressed a boot into his back, holding him down with cruel force. Ariel's heart twisted painfully. She tried to run to him, but another soldier held her firmly. "Princess, you are safe now," he said, though his tone felt cold and rehearsed. Ariel shook her head, fighting against their grip. "He is innocent. He did not harm me. He protected me." The soldiers did not listen. They had already decided the story they wanted to believe. In their eyes, Jace was a kidnapper, a threat, a criminal. Nothing she said seemed to matter. Jace lifted his head just enough to look at her. His eyes were calm, even gentle, as if telling her not to fight. It was strange, he was the one in chains. Yet he looked like the only person who wasn't afraid. Ariel's throat tightened. She had never felt so helpless. She had never hated her own people so deeply. The commander stepped forward, examining Jace with disgust. "This human filth dared touch our princess," he said. "He will be executed on sight." Ariel gasped. "No, you cannot do that," she shouted. "I order you to stop." But the commander did not stop. He only saluted coldly and said, "Forgive me, princess, but the council's orders are higher than yours." Ariel felt her blood run cold. The same council that tried to kill her was now giving orders here. They wanted Jace dead because he knew too much. Because he could expose their betrayal, she realized something terrible if she did not act now. He would die, because of her, because he saved her, Jace, she whispered, stepping forward again, her voice full of pain. He shook his head slightly, as if telling her not to risk herself, but tears filled her eyes. She could not let this happen. As the soldiers dragged Jace toward the ship, Ariel felt something inside her snap. Fear, anger, guilt, and something deeper all rose at once. Her hand began to glow faint blue, the energy inside her responding to her emotions. The soldiers panicked, shouting warnings. Backing away from her power, but before she could fully release it, her body collapsed again, drained and shaking. The soldiers caught her before she hit the ground and carried her onto the ship. Jace was dragged after her, still in chains. Yet in her fading vision, she saw him looking at her with the same calm expression. Not angry, not afraid, only worried for her. As the ship door closed between them, the bond they built was torn apart. Ariel realized one thing with painful clarity. She could not live with herself if he died, and she would fight the entire empire if she had to save the human who refused to leave her alone on that deadly moon. The ship landed inside the empire's capital under heavy guard. Jace was dragged off first, hands still bound, blood on his lip, clothes torn. He did not speak. He only looked around with sharp eyes, memorizing the paths, the guards, the exits. They shoved him into a dark cell. Alone again, cold again. But his thoughts were not on escape. His thoughts were on her, Ariel. In another part of the palace, Ariel was locked in a glowing chamber. Too weak to stand, council members surrounded her, fake smiles on their faces. "Welcome home, princess," one said. "We feared you were lost," said another, but she knew their smiles hid poison. They wanted her dead. They wanted her power buried, and they would kill Jace to make sure her silence remained. That night, as the city slept, Ariel called on the one thing they feared, the power inside her, the energy that lived in her blood. She stood before the crystal mirror, lifted her hand, and whispered the ancient word her mother taught her long ago. The chamber lit up in blue fire. The guards rushed in, but Ariel's energy pushed them back like leaves in the wind. Pain shot through her, but she held the power, forced it to obey. She shattered the door and stepped into the hallway, eyes burning, heart steady. She found the prison wing quickly, guided by memory and fury. Guards tried to stop her, but her light blinded them. Her energy shook the floors, cracked the walls. She reached Jace's cell and ripped the door off with a wave of her hand. He looked up, shocked but calm. "You came back," he whispered. Ariel fell to her knees, weak and shaking. Jace caught her, lifted her into his arms. "I told you," she said, breathing hard. I would not let you die alone. Jace said nothing. He only held her tighter. Together they moved through the palace. More guards blocked the path, but Ariel's light kept them back. Jace fought with only his fists, protecting her with every step. When they reached the council chamber, the doors opened slowly inside. The traitors sat waiting. The High Council stood, shocked to see her alive. You were supposed to be gone, the lead counselor said. You tried to kill your own princess, Ariel said, her voice stronger now, and you punished the one man who saved me. They denied it, of course. They blamed the exile. They called Jace a threat, a beast, a liar. But Ariel stepped forward, her voice like thunder. No, she said. He is more loyal than all of you. She raised her hand, glowing with energy, and touched the council's seal. It recorded truth. It showed memories. And it played the truth out loud, the orders to kill her, to silence her, to exile Jace unfairly. Everyone heard it. Everyone saw it. Guards turned against the traitors instantly. The chamber shook as the old power of justice awakened. The council fell, stripped of titles. They begged, they cried, but Ariel did not listen. Later, in the quiet garden behind the palace, Ariel sat beside Jace. Her arm rested in his, her head on his shoulder. The moonlight above them was soft, not harsh like the exile moon. You're free now, she whispered. Jace looked at her. So are you, he said. She smiled, tired but real. The silence between them was peaceful now. No longer full of fear or pain, only memory. And something new, something that might be hope. The people soon heard the story. Of the exile who saved a princess, of the princess who saved a human. Of two enemies who became each other's only truth. Jace did not ask for rewards, but Ariel gave him a place at her side. Not as a hero, not as a servant, but as a companion. The only one who saw her as more than a crown. And so the man who was once thrown into darkness now stood in the heart of the empire. Beside the girl he refused to leave behind, not for glory, not for power, but because he refused to die alone. And in the end, neither of them ever had to.